Back in 2009, the NBA was in a totally different place. Kobe Bryant and the Lakers were still on top of the basketball world as defending NBA champions. Boston Celtics victory was still intact and better than ever. LeBron, a young LeBron, was still trying to carry a Cleveland Cavaliers team that wasn't really going to go anywhere. Dwight Howard was a top 3 player in the NBA. So many changes across an entire decade of basketball. And then you have the Phoenix Suns. This team, led by Steve Nash, dominated mostly throughout the 2000s. But you all know these guys, mostly known as the 7 seconds or less Phoenix Suns. This team changed the game of basketball, going small. And having a dynamic playmaker like Steve Nash, and you have shooters around him, and you have a dynamic big man as well, and Amar'e Stoudemire, this team was set up to be great. And the Phoenix Suns, they did dominate throughout that decade. But this team, they really, truly never had success. But the last season, in the 2009-2010 NBA season, was possibly the last chance that this Phoenix Suns team could possibly make it to the NBA Finals. Steve Nash wasn't getting any younger. The guy was 35 years old at this time. He was still playing at a pretty high level, but it wasn't going to last forever. Luckily for him, he also had a good running mate in Amar'e Stoudemire, who was fully healthy this season, and he averaged over 23 points a game, and he played all 82 games that season. And another guy who they had was still a really talented player, but he was getting up there in age as well, was Grant Hill. Grant Hill was a very talented NBA basketball player, but we all know his story about how injuries really derailed his NBA career. But regardless of those injuries, he still came back and he had a productive NBA career. But he was going to be on the decline as well. In the regular season that year, the Phoenix Suns performed very well. They were the only team to post a 3-point field goal percentage of over 40%, and they also led the league in points per game with 110 points. And they would go into the playoffs very confident, beating the Trailblazers in the first round of the playoffs. But not only beating the Trailblazers, sweeping the San Antonio Spurs, their rival, who constantly beat them in the Western Conference Finals to make it to the NBA Finals. They swept them in the second round of the NBA playoffs. And going into that, they were heading up against the Lakers, a team that just recently won the NBA championship, and a Kobe Bryant that was determined to get his 5th ring. The Phoenix Suns, they couldn't stop the Black Mamba from getting what he wanted. They lost to the Lakers in 6 games. And with that final defeat, the Phoenix Suns were never the same. After this loss, this team had to go into a complete rebuild. As I said before, Steve Nash wasn't getting any younger, and Amar'e Stoudemire left the Phoenix Suns to go to the New York Knicks. And with that move, that drastically shifted everything for the Phoenix Suns. Many guys were traded away, or many guys left the Phoenix Suns. From that point on, the Phoenix Suns were terrible for the next decade. They really only had one really good year after that point on, and that was, I believe, in the 2014 season when they had Eric Bledsoe and Goran Dragic, and they won 48 games that year, but they still didn't make the playoffs because that's how competitive the Western Conference was. You know, and the crazy part about the Phoenix Suns is that we will always talk about them getting some of the top picks in the NBA draft, but many of those picks, some of these guys, they didn't turn out to be the players that they could have been, especially Josh Jackson. Luckily for him, he's doing a bit better for the Memphis Grizzlies. But drafting Devin Booker was single-handedly one of the greatest decisions that this franchise ever made. And after what it seemed like years of losing and people saying Devin Booker needs to leave the Suns and things like that, the Phoenix Suns have found themselves in a position today that seems better than they were a very long time ago. And if you think back on it, the Phoenix Suns, you know, the last time that they were relevant, as I said before, was the 7 seconds or less Phoenix Suns. When those teams, they were winning 60 games a year. They were competing out in the Western Conference Finals and in the semifinals. And surprisingly now, the Phoenix Suns, they've actually made better draft choices over the past few years. This team, they're young. They have a lots of scoring options. They have playmakers. They even have defense. This team overall, when you look at it on paper, they actually have an all-around basketball team, in my opinion. And now that they have Chris Paul on the roster, you're adding a veteran that is not only still really good at his age, but this man, his IQ for the game of the basketball is on another level. It's on the levels of the LeBron James and Rajon Rondos of the world. Adding that to a guy, Devin Booker, that's already developing to a rising star, who's a guy that can be a superstar in this league, who's more than capable of being that, he's going to be dangerous. But I speak upon the past to just reflect on the Phoenix Suns just, literally a decade ago. That's the last time in 2009, the 2009-2010 NBA season was literally the last time that this team was relevant. And now we're entering into the 2020s. That's a long time. That's like the Sacramento Kings, but the Sacramento Kings haven't made it even further than that yet. They're still struggling to make the playoffs, and they haven't made it in a very, very long time. But yeah, the 2009-2010 Phoenix Suns was the last Phoenix Suns team. They won 54 games. They made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals. LeBron that year left the Cleveland Cavaliers to go to the Miami Heat. Melo was still getting buckets on the Denver Nuggets with Chauncey Billups. And the Oklahoma City Thunder had rising stars, and they won 50 games that year in 2009-2010 with Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden. We all know one of the greatest what-ifs of all time if this team stayed together. Change is just a big word to describe all of this. Complete change. And now, it's still early to say how good the Phoenix Suns can be throughout this regular season because the season just started. But from what it looks like right now, they're off to a really good start. This team, they're a young team as well, so they're going to come out and compete pretty much every night. So I wouldn't be surprised if this team wins close to 50 games this season. And if that's the case, then Devin Booker will definitely be in that contention for, possibly winning MVP. There's many scenarios that can happen this season for the Phoenix Suns. But in my opinion, it looks like this team will definitely make it to the playoffs for the first time since 2010. I hope you guys enjoyed this brief video. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more basketball content, new basketball videos every week. Have a good day. Peace.